All right, that's the background to what we'll be talking about next, out of school children. Let's tell you that as we are going into the next discussion, these are issues we'll be focusing on. And joining us on Zoom is the founder and CEO, IA Foundation, Ronke Adiagbo. Ronke, good morning. It's good to have you join us this morning.
Good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Great. Now, we have discussed this out of school children several times, and the numbers seem to be increasing. I wonder what you make of this when government is saying they're doing everything possible to ensure that children get back to school. Recall that government announced the intervention program in the area of building more schools, and then also the school feeding program in Nigeria. Yet we still have these numbers going up. What do you think is the challenge here?
Okay, thank you so much, Mike, for the question. Those figures are really very depressing. And for me personally, it's keeping me awake because my foundation is set up to help to reduce the number of out-of-school children. And it seems the figures are going in the wrong direction. So I'm not very, very happy this morning. However, it's not rocket science. Let's just put this into context. In the whole world, we've got about 244 million children out of school. In Nigeria, we have 20.2 million of those children, right? So that's just over 8% of the total number of out-of-school children in the world. In sub-Saharan Africa, we have 98 million children out of school. So out of that 98 million, we've got 20 million in Nigeria. So that's just over 20%. So this matter is a very, very serious matter we are talking about. Now, why is the number heading in the wrong direction? The insecurity challenges in Nigeria is exacerbating the problem. I mean, in terms of the total number of out-of-school children in Nigeria, 69% of them are in the north. And we know the insecurity challenges is more prevalent in the north. So therefore, most schools now are closed in the north, right? This is September. Schools are meant to be resuming, but schools are closed in the north. For what reason? Because of the insecurity challenges. So no matter the intervention the government puts into it, until the issue of insecurity is addressed, this problem will still be there. And sometimes I feel like saying to the government that they need to wake up and smell the coffee. They need to give themselves a reality check. The Minister of Education is saying the number of out-of-school children is 6.9 million. How can that be? UNESCO is saying it's 20.2. Look at the gap between the two figures. And the Minister of Education is aware that schools are being closed. So how can the number go down? The Minister of Education is blaming the state governors. The state governors is blaming insecurity. So it's like a revolving door. No one is taking responsibility. The buck needs to stop somewhere. And this problem needs to be addressed holistically by the government of the day.
From what you're saying, it is that we can actually resolve this matter despite the security situation. Is that what you're saying? And if that is the issue, how do we handle it?
Yeah, so basically I'm saying there needs to be the political will. I don't think I'm seeing enough political will. Because if a minister is saying, oh, you blame the state governors, how about you as a minister? What are you doing about it? If I was the Minister of Education, this issue of out-of-school children will be a standing agenda in the weekly FEC meeting. It should even be top of the agenda because these are the future of Nigeria wasting away on the streets. The reason we have a lot of insecurity challenges now is because so many children were on the street years ago. We did not pay attention to them. They've now grown up to be bandits. And now we are seeing this number of out-of-school children at 20 million, and we are still folding our hands. This tells me that in future, we are even going to have bigger insecurity challenges. And that's the reason why this issue needs to be tackled. Everybody must be all hands on deck. Everyone must socially invest. It's not just about the government now. My foundation is helping to, try their best to reduce the number, but it's not enough. Everyone should actually make a decision to actually sponsor a child. So in your neighborhood, if you see a child who is on the street, who is not going to school, if you can afford it, make the effort to sponsor that child, to put that child in school. Because this problem is going to affect every one of us if we're not careful, if we don't deal with this problem. So the issue I'm trying to say now is that the insecurity challenges need to be confronted head-on. The government cannot tell me non-state actors, individuals, are more powerful than the state. If we need to pump more money into defense, into security, then the government have to do what they have to do. Otherwise, we are sitting on a ticking time bomb.
As a response, recently, or we could say some few years ago now, the federal government introduced the Safe School Initiative. How far has that gone from your assessment?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like one step forward, two steps backward. Because even with the investment in the Safer School Initiative, and also World Bank has actually given us 65 billion. And out of that 65 billion, this was given to 13 schools in the north. So it's not short of funds, it's the issue. The issue is the insecurity is not being addressed. So no matter whether you build fanciful schools, you provide all the infrastructural issues for the kids, if the schools are not secure, no parent will send their kids to school. It's simple as that. I mean, if I was a parent of the Chibok girl that was kidnapped, I would not send any of my children to school, because what those parents have gone through and other parents that their children have been kidnapped, what they have gone through is unimaginable. Because when their kids are kidnapped, the government leave them to their own devices, and they have to raise the funds to secure their children. That has even made them even more poorer. So as a consequence, parents are saying, no, we would rather have our kids at home than for them to be in school. So the government have to have initiatives, work with security companies, reinforce the military to make sure schools are safe. Put them in the city center. Don't put them in ungoverned areas. Making sure every school has got robust security infrastructure to reassure parents to send their kids to school.
The government has been using is the issue of school feeding generally, and that has started several years ago. Besides security, if we look at the numbers of the out-of-school children, as much as we have the concentration in the north, we still have some states in the south with the issue of out-of-school children. Using the school feeding program as a strategy, how much is that working from your assessment?
Okay, I mean, you're absolutely right. Akwa Ibom stands out as one of the states in the south that's got a very high out-of-school population. So you're absolutely right on that. Yes, the feeding initiative was useful. The enrollment went up, right? But sometimes when parents hear that, oh, they're kidnapping in other schools, they withdraw their kids. So yes, we make progress, but we move back. We make progress, we move back. We stop and start, stop and start. And this is quite frustrating for the children, because when we went on the street to interview the kids said they want to go to school, but their parents do not want them to go to school because they don't feel the schools are safe enough. So even though they are poor, they need the food. Sometimes they send the kids to school to have the food and they tell them, come back home once you've had the food. That is not what we want. We want the kids to actually stay in the school and actually learn. The other issue is that it's about poverty. Some parents are so poor, they believe, you know what, I would rather use my child for economic reasons, for that child to go out on the street to hawk, because it is whatever revenue that child generates is what we will feed on. So if that child doesn't go on the street to hawk, we would not eat. So they use them for economic reasons. The government needs to legislate against this, that any parent that does not send their kids to school and using them for economic reasons, they will have to face the law. They need to penalize them, because if you don't penalize them, then parents will just continue using their kids as economic for economic purposes. So we really need the government to legislate around this area. I mean, in my foundation, just last week, we were going through the bursary applications, and there was so many sad stories of why children are not in school. Some of them are absent fathers. The mothers cannot afford to send their children to school because the father is disappeared. They can't find the father. Some of them, they are orphans. Some of them are living with neighbors, and the neighbors cannot afford to put them in school. So many sad stories. And that's why I want to encourage many NGOs to really rise up to this challenge. These figures are heading in the wrong direction, and NGOs must work collaboratively with the government to bring these figures down. They are becoming very embarrassing. It's the highest in the world. We are ranking in the same league with India and Pakistan. They have more population than we have. So why should we be in the same league with them? So we really need to take this very seriously. It's really very pathetic.
Right. Another issue has to do with the gender gap, where there is a high rate of girls also out of school. And there's been a lot of advocacy with regards to encouraging the girl child to return to school or to go to school. I wonder how much that has made an impact from these figures that we are getting. Are we doing enough with regards to that? And how much is tradition really hampering our progress?
Yeah, I must say it's not for want of trying. And I want to commend the Borno State governor. Is really doing a lot, especially to make sure the girl child actually has access to education. But the reality of it is that it's all about our culture. We know there's a saying that culture will eat up strategy. No matter how good the strategy is, once you have a culture, a backward culture, that girls' best skills are best used in the kitchen rather than them going to school and becoming, high flyers. Like a classic example, we've got our Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who I'm so proud of. The culture is saying, what, these girls will get married, and when they get married, they need to know how to cook and they need to be in the kitchen. Yes, girls can know how to cook and get education at the same time. The two can go side by side. And the fact that a girl has access to education does not stop them from getting married in future. I'm educated, I'm married, I'm a mother. It doesn't stop anything. So we need to reorientate the parents, especially in the North, and some people for religious reasons. We need to orientate them that you can have access to Western education, still comply with your religious beliefs, and still go out there and perform your female responsibilities. So it's about changing their mindset and actually encouraging them to see role models in the world, women who have gone out there to be good ambassadors of their countries.
We also, look at the situation in, the North, for example. The Goodluck Jonathan administration was largely applauded for the intervention he brought concerning the Almajiri system in the North. And reports also went on to say, observers also went on to say that, governments after that, state governments kind of abandoned the policies. And even despite the knotty issue of insecurity, there's also an issue of, the average Northerner, or will I say the poor Northerner, not going to the school structure that have already been provided, because we even have some states in the North that are relatively safer. If you talk about Taraba State, also ranking low. If you look at, there's Kwara State as well. There's Bauchi State also among the states with the low ranks of, illiteracy and out-of-school children especially. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I need to applaud the past president, Goodluck Jonathan, for that initiative, because we could see the impact of that initiative, especially in Kano State. Kano State had the highest number of out-of-school children in Nigeria, but they've now dropped down because they had over 1 million. Now there are around 800,000 out-of-school children in Kano. Obviously, this is as a consequence of that initiative where, Almajiri's children were allowed to have access to Western education at the same time as having access to their Islamic education. So that reduced the number in Kano. But, 800,000 is still enough. And in different states, the highest now is in Bauchi. Bauchi has got 1.2 million out-of-school children. So we really need to be doing something about this. My only worry about this is that when we try and bring the numbers down, and when insecurity goes up again, that number goes up. So there's a direct correlation between insecurity and these numbers that are improving with insecurity. So a classic example from the data we've got, Kaduna, Katsina, Kano, they are one of the highest with the number of out-of-school children. And I'm sure the government and the state governments are trying their best to reinforce the security in those states. But even the Almajiri, no matter how they want to access Western education, if they still feel unsafe, they will rather stick to the Almajiri within the mosque environment than actually go to school and get kidnapped. So there needs to be a joined up process between the security apparatus of the state, between the education setup, and with the federal government working closely with international bodies like World Bank, like United Nations, to make sure we have the resources to reinforce the security in the school, to reassure parents that yes, Western education can be accessed without any threats to your child being kidnapped.
That they will do everything to ensure that security and normalcy returns to the state. In fact, on the papers just yesterday, the government was saying that insurgency will end by December 2022. We hope, because this is not the first time government is given that kind of assurance, but we hope this time around that is achieved. Now, going further beyond the conventional four walls of a school, what can virtual learning do as a way of increasing the level of educated people and reaching out to students or children to get educated?
Yeah, very good question. We've just recently come out of a pandemic and children were not at school, and there was ways in which they were getting learning. I mean, my foundation invested in e-learning devices, and we distributed it to children so that it's got all the syllabus on it so they can learn whilst they're at home, because the pandemic created a global out-of-school situation for the children. So technology is a good resource to make sure our kids get educated without actually going to the four walls of the school. But the problem we have there is that for a child who has never been in school, who doesn't know how to use technology, living with an illiterate parent, you know, what can they do with those resources? So no matter how good the resource is, if nobody is there to assist or help them, then they cannot make much progress. Again, I make reference to Borno State. The governor of the state has given the students laptops and everything, and also provided the assistance to teach them how to use those resources, because they need to know how to use that learning resource in the first place. So that's a big constraint, because if you are not educated, how can you even be digitally educated, you know, because you might not be able to use the resource properly. So all I'm just trying to say now is that IT should be compulsory within the education syllabus, even from primary school. I mean, my own children who are just in primary school, they even know how to use the computer technology more than I do. So we need to imbibe the orientation, the culture, to make sure the digital divide is reduced, to make sure our children understand how to use IT, because it is the way to go. To make sure this resource the government is pumping in by way of providing laptops and e-learning devices, the children can actually use those devices efficiently.
Right, and that is where I'll also like to take it up with you, the educational system in the country. A majority of persons say that it's not really encouraging, especially it has a myriad of challenges, the challenges of funding and the likes, the curriculum, you know, and it seems not to be encouraging to a lot of persons. Now we are faced with ASUU strike, and there are those who perhaps have gotten married in the process. There are those who perhaps are falling pregnant in the process. And some are saying they may not even return to school at the end of the day. What do you make of this?
Yeah. It's really, really very sad. It's one thing we are talking about out of school children in primary and secondary school. Even the undergraduates are out of school. I really don't know what to say, because we're in a situation where we're in a quagmire. We have a situation where most of our graduates are even unemployable because they're half-baked, right? Some of them cannot even string a sentence together, right? And I don't blame them, because if 50% of the academic year they are at home, of course they are going to forget what they were taught. And I seriously don't know how the Minister of Education is sleeping at night. With the number of out-of-school children and university university undergraduate out of school as well. I think this is really, really very unacceptable. There must be a compromise position to make sure the educational challenges we are facing in the country can be addressed. Even to compound this further, those who have even been educated within the country, that have successfully been educated within the Nigerian system, they are leaving the country in droves to go and improve other economies. So we are losing out on both ends. Our kids are not going to school, and those who have gone to school are leaving the country. So you can imagine what the human capital indices of Nigeria will be in the next couple of years. So this needs serious attention by the government. It's actually one of the most important things which the government needs to be addressing at this point in time. Otherwise, Nigeria will not be able to compete favorably in the world stage. It's about talent management. We are living in a global world. Talents can get headhunted from all over the world. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to the news, and a bank lost 100 staff in one day. And these are their best staff, their most equipped staff, leaving, going to Canada, UK, US. We are losing out on both ends. So the government needs to take this seriously. It's a burning platform at this point in time.
But let's also look at, I don't know, possible solutions to this issue of insecurity. You've spoken about the example or the similarities Nigeria has with Pakistan, India in terms of out-of-school children, even now beating these countries. Pakistan, for example, has, also had or still facing insecurity challenges. How do you see a way around it? Because some of the issues surrounding this insecurity, especially in the north, has to do with the criminals don't want anything to do with education, and that's why they're targeting these schools. How do we get out of this this knotty issue we have at hand?
Yes. Sometimes, when people get educated, they get enlightened. They get wiser, they are smarter, they become prosperous. Some setup don't like that. They don't want people to be empowered. They don't want people to be equipped. They don't want people to be enabled. So the only way to make sure people are not equipped is to make sure they don't have access to education. So what it is we are in a war situation whereby we've got some non-state actors trying to fight the education system to make sure people are not educated, they are not enlightened, and they can be prosperous. Even within the political elites, some of the political elites actually do not want people to have access to education, because the moment you are educated, you can stand up for yourself, you can actually intelligently decide who you're going to vote for. But if you're not educated, whoever they tell you to vote for and they give you money, you vote for them. So there's a tension in the system. Those who do not want people to be educated, and those who want people to be educated. Now, we cannot afford for these non-state actors to win the battle. Education is under attack as we speak now. We are in a war situation in terms of education in Nigeria, and we all need to rise up to tackle this insurgency. One of the issues we need to try and address is we need to ask for foreign assistance. There's nothing bad in asking for foreign assistance in terms of trying to help us to reinforce our education sector and to make sure in terms of the syllabuses which we're teaching, we are up to date, and also to make sure the environment, because everything is now technologically driven. Sometimes when I see pictures of some schools on TV, I just wonder, how can any state government preside over a state with classrooms like this? In this day and age, we don't use the blackboards anymore. We use interactive boards. How many schools in Nigeria has got those facilities? We need resources pumped into those schools. We need them to be digitally savvy. We need to tap on foreign investment for them to help us to reinforce our schools. Even apart from the main security apparatus in the country, we have security firms within Nigeria that can supplement the security forces, right? To make sure schools are secured. When you're coming in through the gates, you've got security men in your classroom, around your classroom, you've got security men and women. This will encourage parents to say, you know what, I have confidence that the school is secured enough, I can actually send my child to school. The government of the day also needs to take this very seriously. I know we are approaching elections, but the incoming government should take this seriously, because I can't see much that this current government can do. They need to prioritize it. When the candidates are talking about their manifesto, I would like to see the reduction of out-of-school children as part of their topmost manifesto in terms of what they intend to do. Issue policy statements, how you plan to reduce the number of out-of-school children. But I'm sure the Western world is ready to support us to make sure we can tackle this problem, because they would suffer from it as well if Nigerians are not educated. So we need to adopt a joined-up approach. But more importantly, I would just appeal to the Minister of Education to wake up and actually face this challenge, because it's a serious challenge. I need him to be more visible on the matter. I need him going out internationally, seeking support to make sure our Nigerian educational system does not crumble.
All right, Ronke, the education is on the concurrent legislative list, which means that the federal government and state government, even local government, all have roles to play in ensuring that we have a good education. You made reference to, or you mentioned Borno State here as regarding what the Governor Zulum is doing there. What can state governments do when, apart from security, where we know that the federal government is the one vested with the responsibility for security? But beyond that, being strategic, being intentional, what can state governments do to turn around all of the statistics and the situation that we're talking about?
I think more importantly, there's something we call peer review. Other state governors should go and learn from Governor Zulum what he's doing well, right? There's no shame in that. However, more importantly, it's about the budgetary allocation for education. I mean, when you go to Borno, you see shiny, bright new schools. You see him giving out laptops and even bicycles as well. You understand? It costs money. It doesn't come cheap. I mean, UN did recommend that any country should at least allocate 15% of their total budget to education. The total budgetary allocation for education in Nigeria is less than 7%. So are you surprised that the schools are not well resourced? So even if the federal government refused to get to that threshold of 15%, state governors can make that intentional decision to say, you know what, in my state, I'm going to allocate 50% of my total budget to education. I'm going to equip my schools. I'm going to make sure schools have the right infrastructure. I'm going to make sure they have good teachers. Again, I was listening to the news last week. I understand, I think it's in Zamfara State. They found over 5,000 teachers that were not equipped enough to teach. Now, if you have a teacher who is not equipped enough to teach, can you imagine what they're imbibing in those children? But you don't blame the teachers, because if the state does not train the teachers, and I'm talking about continuous education here now, because it's one thing for you to qualify as a teacher, you must continually equip yourself and continuously professionally develop yourself. So if they don't do that, they will lose touch with technology and things like that. And it's a case of garbage in, garbage out with the students. So the government of the day must put their money where their mouth is, increase the budgetary allocation in the states, equip the teachers, make sure there's good infrastructures in the school, and make sure, more importantly, the schools are secured. Also, they need to engage with the parents and the guardians of these children to make sure those that are still hesitant about sending their kids to school, they work with them collaboratively, encourage them, reassure them to send their kids to school. So if all that is done at the state level, hopefully when they all come together, nationally, we would make some progress.
All right, thank you so much. We need to leave you here now. Ronke Ediagbo, the founder and CEO of IA Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Great.